Sometimes there's not a lot to say as BYU falls to Texas Tech, and we're going to try and make sense of what happened in Lubbock. Let's a postcast edition of Locked On Cougars.
You are Locked On Cougars, your daily podcast on the BYU Cougars, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up, everybody? Welcome into Locked On Cougars, your daily podcast focused on the BYU Cougars. I'm Jake Hatch, executive producer of the KSL Sports Zone in Salt Lake City, Utah, and a 14-year credentialed media member at BYU. I am your resident expert and insider, your host here on the podcast. And as always, thank you for making Locked On Cougars your first listen of the day. All right, tough loss for BYU as they fall to Texas Tech 29-7. And quite honestly, my first thought out of the chute here as we recap this is that you got to tip your cap to Texas Tech. That team, they look like they're a cut above literally everybody else in the Big 12 conference. Yes, I know that they lost to Arizona State, but they kind of showed, I think, against BYU exactly what makes them so elite, and it's mainly their defense. Their defense is downright elite. They are very, very good at owning the line of scrimmage. And there were some stories. I think it was The Athletic put a story out during the game saying they had spent over $7 million alone when it comes to NIL and the other things you can pay players to get that defensive line beefed up. And to their credit, they owned it. Jacob Rodriguez, David Bailey, Romello Height. They had so many guys swarming BYU that it was really, really tough for BYU in that. Also, I said it, I just did a short recap for a YouTube short, and oftentimes you can win football games when two sides of the football show up. So speaking of the three phases of football, offense, defense, and special teams, you can win a lot of games when you have two of three show up, mainly offense and defense. But when you only have one of three show up, and that's BYU's defense, it showed up, they did their part. 29 points is not on them. They actually could have seen that scoreline balloon a lot more had BYU's defense not been as good as it was. But when BYU's offense and their special teams fail them, yeah, that's going to be tough to absorb if you're BYU. And it's exactly what happened in this game. Many of you know that I have been a pretty strong supporter of Aaron Roderick's, but this game, that game plan was not functioning the way I think that any of us would have expected it to. And quite, I guess I'll just say this. It felt like they went back to the Bear Bachmeier mold of earlier this year where they were trying to protect him from himself in a way. Whereas what we saw against Iowa State, think about it. When LJ Martin went out against Iowa State and BYU fell behind, they essentially said, okay, to heck with it. Let's just throw everything that we had game plan wise with LJ Martin in the trash bin over there. And let's just kind of go let things fly. And they really went after it against Iowa State, and it felt like they reverted back to some of the form they had earlier this year where they were hoping that they could control the line of scrimmage, run the ball, and keep Bear Bachmeier obviously operating within the framework of this offense. Didn't work. It did not work. And I felt like BYU, they opened it up late out of desperation, but probably should have gone to that a little bit earlier. And I look at it as Bear Bachmeier has proven himself capable of being a very, very good, if not great quarterback, despite being a true freshman. And he had his moments in this game that I think hurt BYU. That late turnover, obviously, it was kind of a microcosm of what went wrong when he kind of tried to get the ball out and he throws it backwards and ball gets turned over to Texas Tech. And it's a tough loss to stomach. And the offense didn't bail out their defense. And the special teams didn't do anything either. A muffed punt, a missed field goal, a shanked punt, the very first punt of the game. Later, there was other missed opportunities, ill-advised decisions to return kickoffs. Man, it was a rough day. So I think that it's a game that you're going to have to shake off quickly if you're BYU. It's a loss. Obviously, it drops their first loss of the season. They're now 8-1, and we'll see what happens with the college football playoff poll coming out on Tuesday night. But it was a top 10 team you went up against. And yes, you lost in blowout fashion. But I also don't think that the college football playoff committee is going to drop BYU like they did a season ago. At least I hope not, because last year when BYU dropped that first game to Texas Tech, remember they were 6th in the country, and they lost to a Kansas team, despite being a pretty strong team at that time, was still sub 500 in their overall record. And the committee saw it fit, say, you lose to a sub 500 team, we're going to penalize you for that. This is a different circumstance. Texas Tech, fellow top 10 team and very good team as well. I wouldn't be surprised to see Tech rise into the top 5. Now, that obviously depends on how other results play out because it's still early on this Saturday of college football, and we'll see where things shake out when it comes to other teams in the top 10. That Texas Tech team, as I said, you got to just kind of tip your cap to them and say, hey, good game, boys, because they own this game. Credit to them. Full credit to the Texas Tech Red Raiders. I sent a text to our good friend Chris Level at Locked On Texas Tech and just simply said, hat tip, hope to see you in Lubbock. Hope to see you in Lubbock. Hope to see you in Arlington. And he said, hopefully. Because the other thing about this is there's a lot of doom and gloom, obviously. And we'll get to your comments in a minute. Let's just keep piling up, man. You can see them kind of rolling if you're watching this on YouTube. I've got 92 in my column that I'm flipping over to that have stacked up since I flipped back from that. But you had a mulligan to use, and any of you who are golfers know what I'm talking about. A mulligan in golf means you have a chance to hit one shot over, and you had that if you're BYU. You could afford one loss down the stretch here. Well, that loss has now been incurred for BYU, and now they have to run the table to maintain their fate of making it to the Big 12 title game. If they can beat TCU next week, if they can handle Cincinnati after that, and then they can finish up the season against UCF, BYU will go to Arlington, Texas. They can absorb the one loss. The problem is you can't allow this loss to beat you a second time, which is something that happened a season ago. They lost to Kansas, and it bled over. It felt like into that Arizona State game. And those two losses ultimately did BYU in. And that's what you need to avoid here. We have heard from Kalani Sitake and multiple members of the BYU football program about wanting to control the controllable. Well, controlling it is winning out from here on out. You could drop one, and it would have been nice to keep that mulligan in your back pocket as long as possible, but you cashed it in here. So you've got every opportunity now to rebound, get up, dust yourself off, and get back after it next week against TCU at home. I also look at this as a game that BYU will learn a lot from. They know the level that Texas Tech now can play at, and they had an elite home field advantage down there in Lubbock. That was absolutely incredible. The scenes from Jones AT&T Stadium were absolutely incredible, and makes me pine all the more for a chance to go out and travel to venues like that for games of this variety. But nonetheless, it's a tough L to absorb for BYU, and I know that some of you, I see it kind of rolling through. That big flop. Kalani is no good after bye weeks. The bye week was supposed to be an advantage for BYU. Sure didn't look that way. So, yeah, tough look. And, yeah, the offense and special teams, man, did you give them anything more than an F? Like, honestly, it was just they didn't show up. And I know the offense did some things late. Obviously, that one touchdown drive that they had, but where was that really the rest of the game? In many respects, I thought it was garbage time. Texas Tech called off the dogs, kind of playing some prevent type defense, and BYU finally found some gaps in that secondary and were able to exploit them. They needed to have a better game plan. And as I said, I felt like, I'll just reiterate this one more time. It felt like what we saw against Iowa State from Bear Bachmar, where essentially the offense was put on his shoulders and they said, hey, go out there and let it rip, kid. They kind of ripped it away from him in this game, speaking of Texas Tech. And that goes to Kalani Sitake, Aaron Roderick, and the rest of the BYU offensive brain trust. They need to trust this young man. It feels like more than they did. And did he also get rattled in this game? Yeah, I think he did. I think we saw some signs of a true freshman quarterback going up against an elite pass rush and at times getting balled up and making bad decisions. So, yeah, it's not a tough thing it's a tough thing to absorb there. Interesting here. Parker, so I'll throw this up right now because Parker Kingston took some shots in that game. Parker was playing with a broken rib. Well, that would explain a lot of why he was getting up so slow late in this game because Parker Kingston took a lot of shots in that one. So I think that, the biggest message I think to absorb if you're a BYU fan out there who's wanting to hang this loss on somebody, hang it on the offense and special teams. Like you can have one side of the football and BYU's defense, man, mad credit goes to those guys. Jack Kelly and Isaiah Glasker look completely refreshed. They were struggling mightily against the likes of Iowa State ahead of that bye week, and they used that bye week, it appears, to kind of refresh themselves because those two in particular, Isaiah Glasker and Jack Kelly, were absolutely dominant, it felt like, at times in this game. But Baron Morton playing with a fractured fibula. He's got a hairline fracture in his leg. 17 of 32, 219 yards, one touchdown, QB rating of 120.9. Compare that to Bear Bachmeier, 23 of 38, 188, one touchdown, one interception. His QB rating 105.5. So, yeah, just a tough day at the office for BYU. And the rushing attack for BYU got bottled up. 67. Count it. 67. 6-7. Okay, I'll get that out of the way right now. But the thing is, the 67 yards on the ground, 2.5 yards per carry. It's not good enough. And conversely, Texas Tech, they ended up with 3.5 yards per carry with 43 attempts, 149 yards. And BYU did their absolute darndest to hold down this Texas Tech offense, speaking defensively, because had Texas Tech been able to cash in some more of those field goals for touchdowns, I'm telling you, 29-7 could have been 42, 49. It could have been a whole lot worse. So, yeah, mad credit to BYU's defense. They showed up, but the offense and special teams, their inability to do much of anything right in this game did BYU in. So, yeah, Mulligan has been used now. Now you got to get up, and you can't afford to let this bleed over. They'll fly back from Texas Tech today. They should arrive later tonight, and then they got to get right to work and focus on the here and now. And the here and now going forward is TCU. Texas Tech's in the rearview mirror, and you may get a chance for a second crack at Texas Tech. And I can tell you, the players, being the competitors that they are, in their minds, they're probably thinking, we want another shot at those guys. We want to go out there and prove ourselves on a neutral field, in that case, out there in Arlington, Texas, and see what we're capable of, because that's the competitor mindset. You don't want to yield an inch. So it's going to be interesting to see how the Cougars absorb this, internalize it, and then hopefully use it as fuel to the fire as they try and rebound against TCU. I got some thoughts on TCU we'll get to here in a little bit. We'll also get to your guys' comments as well. I think a lot of good thoughts kind of rolled in here about what BYU needs to do to rebound. But I guess the good news in all of this is BYU has not lost any control of their fate when it comes to the Big 12 title race. They could absorb one loss. They could absorb one, and they've used it. Now, you got to run the gauntlet. You got to run the rest of this stretch, and they're 4 games through this 6-game stretch, and they're 3-1 in that. You can't have 3-2. You can't have 3-3, especially so. But now, full focus, turn your attention to TCU. All right, we'll get to more of your comments here momentarily. Also need to talk a little bit about what the rest of the Big 12 race is shaping up like. Where do things stand with regards to Texas Tech? Where do things stand with Utah? That type of stuff. So we'll get to all of that, and we'll continue on momentarily as we roll on this postcast edition of Locked On Cougars. Today's show is brought to you by our friends over at Game Time. Now, Game Time is here for you guys, get you the tickets you want to go out to the events you want to see, whether it's sporting events, theater, comedy, music, no matter what you're into, Game Time has got the options for you. The best part about Game Time is the app. You go into it, and what you see is what you pay. Simple as that. I love the fact that you're not having fees tacked on at the end when you're trying to check out, and all of a sudden that payment balloons as you're trying to get those hard-won tickets, it feels like, to go to the events you want to go to. So take the guesswork out of buying your tickets and do it with our friends over at Game Time. The best part also is they have zone deals. You pick the section you want to sit in, they give you the tickets, and you save money along the way. It's the fastest, cheapest, and least stressful way that I've found about buying my tickets. I want you guys to give it a shot as well. Take the guesswork out of buying your tickets and download the Game Time app today. Create an account and redeem the promo code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, it's promo code LOCKEDONCOLLEGE for $20 off. Swipe, tap, ticket, go. Download Game Time today. Thank you once again for making Locked On Cougars your first listen of the day. Hope you all are doing well out there on this Saturday afternoon. Tough loss for BYU. There's just no other way to spin it, and I'm not going to try and spin it for you guys. That was a tough L to internalize, to absorb, and BYU has a lot of work. I think they learned a lot about where they stand in relation to Texas Tech after this loss, and I'm sure that the coaches will be getting after these guys about their failings in this game. And I don't think they're going to take it much harder than the coaches themselves, because coming off a bye week, it should have been a better performance from BYU. And I'm expecting that Kalani Sitake will address that in his post-game comments. We're doing this early enough. I don't think he's even probably taken the podium yet. If he has, I haven't seen the tweets roll through. Granted, I also don't have my Twitter feed rolling live time as we're doing this, but I also look at this as an opportunity for BYU to show what they're made of, because a season ago, they talked about the fact this week leading up to this Texas Tech game that they understood how they let things slip a season ago, especially in the aftermath of that Kansas loss. They went to Arizona State and were feeling a little bit down about themselves and found themselves way behind the 8 ball. And they battled back in the Arizona State game and almost ground out a win. That was Chase Roberts came like a yard short on that Hail Mary attempt, but they saw their control of their fate fall out of their hand, and they were absolutely adamant that they did not want to see their fate of playing in the postseason, whether it comes to the Big 12 title game or otherwise, taken out of their hands again this year. And they still have that a chance for them. So I also look at this as an opportunity for BYU to say, okay, we got beat soundly. Now let's go out there and get back after it. Other point here, we could have beat them if they win the turnover margin. BYU was -3 in the margin, and there were at least 2 interceptions. One, was Evan Johnson, if I recall, early on in this game that Clay Aiken, I don't remember what Aiken's last name. Clay Aiken's the singer. That's a random pull from the deep recesses of my brain. But he hauls that pass in when Evan Johnson had decided to I think drive a little harder on that, may have picked that pass off. Evan kind of was floating, thinking, okay, it's going to settle right into my arms, and I'm going to be the hero. Late in the game, Trey Alexander had one thrown like right. I'm talking right to him, and it goes off his hands and out of bounds. You got to take advantage of opportunities when they're afforded to you, and it's kind of yet another microcosm of this game for BYU. They could not find those game-changing plays when they needed them. And when you're -3 in the margin, yeah, it's going to make it very, very tough. Other things I look at in terms of failings: 3 of 14 on third down, 1 of 3 on fourth down. Those are, they call them the money downs. You got to be able to convert. And 3 of 14, it's kind of been a season-long issue in terms of the overall inability to stay on the field and have sustained success on this offense. LJ Martin, I got to give him credit for going out there and battling as best he possibly could. You can tell he's not 100%. That shoulder is clearly injured, and the hope is he gets back in the training room and gets it as healed up as humanly possible, because BYU can ill afford not to have him on the football field. I love guys like Preston Rex. I love Enoch Nawahina. I love what they're capable of, but they're just not the same caliber of what a guy like LJ Martin and or Sione Moa is. Now, Sione Moa was on the trip with BYU, but not suited up. So I do think that we are going to have to see this rushing attack try and find something. Aaron Roderick said that Jovessa Demooney's not in the doghouse, but have you seen Jovessa Demooney play? I haven't, since he fumbled. I think it was like 3 or 4 weeks ago. I don't know what's going on there, but I would at least give him a shot. So I do think it'll be interesting to see what BYU does here. Answer this question real quick. Tim, Time Dungeon 3560. Are you planning to go to the basketball game tonight? If so, I hope I can meet you there. I am planning to be at the Marriott Center tonight, so I'm hoping to meet a number of you out there as well. Hopefully, the basketball team can offer a little bit of positive vibes in terms of getting a win over Holy Cross. So Hope Kingston is okay. I was worried about that. I think a guy Shorts all year earlier said he had a broken rib he was playing with in the game. Martin isn't 40%. I think he's more than 40%. If he was less than 50%, there's no way BYU puts him on the field. You're a danger to yourself if you're out there at sub 50%. So I think that you need to find a way to generate more in the rushing attack. And the QB draw, it's out on film now. Teams are ready for it. And Bear Bachmeier has used it to great effect this year. Trust me, it has ground out a lot of good yardage for BYU on the ground, but the cat's out of the bag on that play. So I think that you got to find new options in the rushing attack, and that's going to go on Aaron Roderick. I also, guys like TJ Woods as the run game coordinator. They're going to have to scheme some things up. So, yeah, good point here by Big Floppa as well. BYU always finds a way, just not tonight or today. It's a good point. BYU had found a way in so many different circumstances this year. But Texas Tech, I said it going into the game, and I'll reiterate it here. They were far and away the best team BYU has played to date. They absolutely are. That is a playoff caliber roster. And Tech, they can have people hating on them for spending money in NIL. Guess what? They have used that NIL, and a lot of other teams watch NIL stuff kind of go by the wayside, where guys kind of become too selfish about things when it comes to money and the like. Joey McGuire and his staff, they've got a team. They play together. They play complementary football. I'm going to give mad credit against Tech, not against it, to Tech for what they did in this game, because they acquitted themselves as the class of the Big 12. There's just no other way to spin it other than they are far and away, in my opinion, the best team in the Big 12. It has me questioning a little bit how Arizona State won that game against them, but that was also with Sam Leavitt and Jordan Tyson, who are two of the elite players offensively in the Big 12 in that lineup for ASU. And now Sam Leavitt's done for the year, and Jordan Tyson's been in and out of the lineup all season long for ASU, so it might have been more of a fluke than anything else. But the biggest thing, I'll just, and some of you are probably just tuning in for the first time, talking about the offensive failings in this game. I would have liked to have seen BYU open it up and let Bear Bachmeier rip a little bit more. And some of you who I was texting with in game, really close friends who have my actual phone number, I was gonna mention this. It felt like when BYU against Iowa State allowed Bear Bachmeier to kind of go out there and play ball, it looked a lot better than it did against Texas Tech. Now, Iowa State and Texas Tech's defenses are two different levels. I've acknowledged that. I think somebody earlier said that the point is that Tech, they've got a legit NFL style defensive line. It looks that way. So it's going to be interesting to see if BYU gets another crack at Texas Tech in the Big 12 title game, because that's where it ultimately would come down, how they will counter that. Like that's going to be the number one question. If they get another chance against Texas Tech, how are you going to counter what Tech offers defensively? Because I'm telling you, that front seven is really, really good. All right. Good points here being pointed out. Ben Howard, we were never going to win this game. We are fortunate to be 8-1. This team is good, but not great. Someone tell me how ASU beat this Tech team. It's a great point. I think ASU did it. Kind of Band-Aid that put it together. And they did it with a lot of quick strike offense. Something I just talked about, how I would like to see BYU maybe go some more tempo offensively in this game. I understand the mindset BYU had. They wanted to keep Bear Bachmeier as protected as possible. We saw, you guys probably remember from years ago, remember how the old Robert and I team's offensive linemen would hold hands, then when they knew the snap had gone to help guys feel when it would happen. They're doing it with the tight ends and max protect. I think in some ways that actually hurt BYU. It brought more players closer to the line of scrimmage for Texas Tech where they could tee off and come after Bear Bachmeier, whereas maybe they should have gone maybe to some more 4 wide sets, spread Texas Tech out and see what they were capable of. You know what? You live and learn, and you're going to have to do something better about that. So I do think it's a big credit to Texas Tech for dominating. Honestly, it was dominance from Texas Tech. Okay, that's a good point here about Big Flop here. I want to be unworried, but it's hard to be. It's in the immediate aftermath of the game. It's natural to be upset and unhappy about what happened. Good point here also by the real CSB. Tech had a backup QB versus ASU. They did have Will Hammond, who I think is actually a pretty dang good QB. He was playing for Tech in that game as Baron Morton, who, by the way, he earned his man card in a gazillion ways because him playing with a fractured fibula. He's got a hairline fracture in that fibula. It's part of, like I said, carbon fiber plate down there to help protect it as much as possible. That dude's a dude. Like, to play with that, that's really cool to see that. So, okay, this is good. This is a point here we can talk about. Julian Vivas, 2895. I feel like A-Rod is holding Bear back. I do think that in this game, he may have held him back a little bit. I agree with you on that. I can acknowledge that because, as I said, the Iowa State game looked like a guy like Bear Bachmeier, what he appeared to be capable of. Because when you run off a 31-3 run like they did against Iowa State, you're feeling good about that offense. You're like, wow, this kid put up 350 of 400 yards offensively. And we'll see. They're going to have to find a way to kind of balance those two things because they want to run the ball. They got to keep some semblance of balance. You can't completely abandon the running game because other teams will just start throwing all kinds of pass rush and blitz at you, or they'll drop back and just force you to beat them underneath. So, yeah, it's a really, really tough game. Derek Neff, who won? I think you all know who won. Texas Tech won. I've already talked about that. We've been going for 24 minutes on this postcast. So if you're just checking in, yeah, Texas Tech won the game. Breaking news. Other things. Okay, do you think having a neutral site in a potential rematch in Arlington would make a big difference for us? How much do you think that the away game played a factor? It played a factor, and I do think that BYU in a neutral site with more Cougar fans in attendance, that could play a little bit of a role. Now, any of you who have been in AT&T Stadium, the home of the Dallas Cowboys, you know how cavernous that place is. It holds 100,000 plus people, and I'm sure Cougar fans will show up in droves, but Texas Tech is in Texas. So guess what? I'm not going to be surprised if Red Raider fans show up in droves as well. I think it'd be an absolutely elite atmosphere to have these two fan bases in that arena and playing that game. But that's 4 games away. You've got 3 other games in front of you. You've got to win if you want to play in that. Now, could you make it at 10-2? Yes, you could, but you have to have the tiebreakers work out in your favor. And I can tell you, BYU has been a broken record, speaking of Kalani Sitake and others, about we don't want to leave it up to chance. They left up the chance a year ago, and they've got burned. Iowa State got to go to Arlington, while BYU got left home and had to play in the Alamo Bowl. They don't want to leave it to a tiebreaker or tiebreakers to play that. So I do think that it's a missed opportunity for BYU in this game against Texas Tech. You would have liked to see them play a little bit better in this game, especially offensively and special teams. But I do think they'll be better for this. Okay, Jackson, I don't know why I keep asking the same question. How do you feel the play calling from your perspective? Wasn't great. Too much east-west. Should have gone more north-south. Should have opened it up more often. That's your answer to your question there. So I do think that ill-advised penalties, turnovers, a lot of things hurt BYU in this game that I'm sure Kalani and others will be pointing out to the media, will be pointing out to the fans, will be pointing out to their own team about where things broke down in this game. So I do think it's an interesting dynamic here that BYU, they let the loss to Kansas hold over into that Arizona State game. And as I said, dropped to 10-2 and ultimately cost themselves a chance to go to Arlington. How do they respond to this game against Texas Tech? Because that's the best opponent BYU is going to play until they get to a Big 12 title game and a rematch against Tech or the college football playoff. It's nothing against TCU. It's nothing against Cincinnati. It's nothing against UCF. They're just not on the same level as Texas Tech, who I think truly showed is that they are a cut above the rest of the Big 12. There's zero doubt about that. Is Jake still loving on A-Rod? Thanks for checking in late, the real BR. You missed 30 minutes of me ripping A-Rod for the game plan on this. It wasn't a good game plan. It was not the game plan you needed in this game. And I know that I'm an analyst looking back at it in retrospect from the comfort of my house, but it was not a good game plan overall. So I look at this as an opportunity for BYU now to show what they're capable of. Have they learned that lesson from a season ago? Are they going to let things slip? Are they going to have that holdover when TCU comes to town next Saturday and have the chance to go to Arlington ripped out of their hands? That's, I think, what we're going to see. Did Texas Tech just show they are a top 5 team with Barron as the starter? When Barron's healthy, I do think they are. I do think Texas Tech is a top 5 caliber team. I really do think that they are that good of a team. I really do think they are a talented football program, and money well spent. Money well spent for Texas Tech, because I don't begrudge them one bit for utilizing NIL to bring in guys like David Bailey, who, by the way, David Bailey, I love the fact that he doesn't play with like any gloves, any tape, nothing on his arm, like no wristbands. His shoulder pads are showing. He got the jersey tucked up underneath there. That's an old school football player. And David Bailey, that dude can absolutely get after it. So I really do think it was a fun thing to watch that Texas Tech defense operate the way it did, unfortunately, at BYU's expense. All right, we'll get to more of your comments momentarily. I do want to talk a little bit more about the defense, because it's a good point here by Jackson. Our defense just got tired but played great. There's no doubt. Had they not played as well as they did defensively, I'm telling you, 29-7 could have been easily 42 or 49 points, it feels like, in so many ways. So more thoughts on this coming up as we continue to break this down. Postcast edition of Locked On Cougars rolls on right here on the Locked On Cougars podcast. Today's show is brought to you by our friends over at FanDuel. They got an offer for you guys with the NBA underway. FanDuel is offering $300 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. It's as simple as that. All you got to go is go to FanDuel.com, place your first $5 bet. If it hits, you get $300 in your account to utilize over on the FanDuel platform. Even if it's the start of a game or you want to get right on the hot hand in game, FanDuel has live bets to help you guys keep yourself engaged in said game. You can bet on who will score next, fourth quarter comebacks, and everything else in between. It keeps every game exciting, especially when your team is making that late push. Unfortunately, BYU did not make a late push in this game today. Right now, new customers, once again, is offering new customers $300 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. Head to FanDuel.com to sign up today and play your game with FanDuel. They are the official sports betting partner of the NBA. Thank you once again for making Locked On Cougars your first listen of the day. A plug for you guys. If you have not done so already, make sure you like the show, hit that thumbs up icon, subscribe, rate and review it wherever you get your podcasts, and also join the Locked On Cougars Insider Group if you want the inside scoop on all things BYU. I know a bunch of you Texas Tech fans. You guys are part of the Matador Club. Our guys down there at Locked On Texas Tech, Chris and Casey, do a great job with their insider group as well. So if you're watching and you're a Texas Tech fan, I'm just going to plug, join the Matador Club, but also if you're a BYU fan, join the Locked On Cougars Insider Club. All right. Other points here. Okay. Here's the thing. Looking at the future for BYU now. Texas Tech is going to obviously be a team you hope to get a rematch against in 4 weeks' time down there in Arlington, Texas. But now you have to focus on TCU. And TCU, they're not going to make it easy. They play Iowa State later today. I think it's just underway, actually. I'll check on that. TCU football while I'm Googling this. But they are going to be a challenge for BYU. And it's going to be a game that BYU has to be wary of, because if you know the history of BYU and TCU, they've played some absolute barn burners in the, not, I guess it's more recent, it's not recent past, but it's been a while, because remember, these two teams, TCU and BYU, were long time rivals during that Mountain West, the kind of final stanza of the Mountain West era before Utah went to the Pac-12, TCU jumped to the Big 12, and BYU jumped to independence. Okay, right now, 6-0 in favor of Iowa State. Any of you who are watching this, like, after the fact, are going to be very confused by that. But I do think that you have to avoid letting this game linger in your minds. Interesting point here. I hope BYU's wall will open up towards football this coming year. It's been fairly open for football, but I think Texas Tech proved if you can find the right guys in the portal, pay them, get them there, and you got to have a strong culture. And I think it's something that BYU doesn't lack for, a strong culture to build a good team. And I think Texas Tech showed that exact thing. They have put together a very, very good team. And someone want to call it the best roster money can buy. Hey, mad props to them for that. So I do think it's an opportunity for BYU looking way down the line when it comes to the transfer portal. Yeah, maybe they open up the pocketbook a little bit more and try and bring in some more talent. But that's also not really BYU's game. They're more about truly culture fit than anything else when it comes to what they're looking like. Interesting point here by John. Was Bear a little overhyped going into this game? Let's be honest. Maybe so, but he's 8-0 as a true freshman. Like, I don't know what else you want to do other than hype him up, because he has proven very, very good relative to his age. And I think we need to kind of get past the true freshman thing. I'm guilty of talking about he's a true freshman. He's now 9 games deep into his freshman campaign. So we probably need to let that go. And in terms of having him in the mix, in terms of him, the freshman part of it, I guess, is the best way to say that, is kind of let go of that and now focus on what he's capable of, because the future looks really, really bright with him at quarterback. But this is a game he struggled in. BYU's offense overall struggled. They ran the ball a little bit early on, but really didn't do much beyond that. So it was a tough day at the office for BYU's offense. The special teams, yeah, Kelly Papinga is going to be tearing his hair out, I'm sure, because I know how much these coaches bemoan when guys screw up, and they wonder if it kind of falls back on something that they have gotten their guys' heads about. So I do think that a QB like Bear Bachmeier, you shouldn't be out on him. He's 8-1. Great. That's a great record to have as a freshman quarterback. He's going to have some much better days ahead for BYU offensively, and he's only going to get better from here. He led BYU to an 8-0 record. He had them in the top 10, and we'll see where the CFP rankings drop them. I have a hard time seeing BYU really dropping outside of maybe 12 at the most. And there's a question, I think, in here about Utah's going to jump BYU in the CFP rankings. No, they won't do that. They have shown, I think, the CFP committee, they value head-to-head results, and BYU has that head-to-head result over Utah. So that'll be interesting to see where that shakes out. Martin shouldn't have even played. Do you want to have a running game in this game? Like, here's the thing. I thought Martin actually did everything he possibly could in this game, and I got to give him credit for even going out there. He easily could have sat out, and I think he understood what BYU was up against in this game, and he's actually a former Texas Tech commit, and I think he wanted to go out there and do what he could. He led BYU in rushing, 10 attempts for 35 yards, average of 3.5 yards per carry. He's limited. It's clear that he's limited, but I think that BYU the players that are going out there and putting on for BYU, you got to give them mad credit. It's the flip side also to Texas Tech for a guy like Baron Morton. That guy's got a broken leg. He's got a fracture in his fibula. Like, dude, like these guys are warriors. They're modern day gladiators. And I got to give guys credit for going out there and doing what they can do. I would rest LJ next game. Well, here's the thing. Are you going to be able to beat TCU without him? That is the question. I don't think, and I don't know when Sione Moa is coming back. If he is coming back, he is still on the injury report, the player availability reports from the Big 12 that they put out weekly, meaning that BYU is keeping him, I guess, like in terms of, you want to use the NFL example, he's on injured reserve, but with the designation to return. When he returns, nobody knows. And I think without LJ or him in the lineup, really what rushing attack do you have outside of Bear Bachmeier? And I think we saw Bear Bachmeier, the scouting report is out on his rushing ability. Texas Tech bottled it up. And so I do think it's an interesting situation. Can we get a wellness check on Kingston? Checking in late, John. It was said earlier on in the postcast that he was playing with a broken rib. So maybe he didn't necessarily exacerbate that, but he did not look great as the game wound down because he took some major shots in this. I'm not saying he shouldn't have. He was clearly hurting. I shouldn't give me all. He just isn't healthy enough. But once again, if he wants to play and they clear him, the doctor's going to clear him, you're going to tell him shut it down. Like these kids, they love the game that they're playing. And he did his absolute best out there. Maybe I guess if you think the coaches should have shut him down, but the coaches, they understand what they're up against in a game like this. You need is all hands on deck in a game like this. So I don't know. I'm interested to see how he responds next week, but it's easy to say that LJ shouldn't have played, but I'd have a hard time holding him out. If he wants to play ball and the doctors say he's capable of playing, he's very, very good. All right, a couple more thoughts before we wrap things up here because we're almost 40 minutes deep on this, is that BYU's defense has nothing to hang their head about. I know that guys like Jay Hill are going to lament the fact that they couldn't hold Texas Tech down more than they did, but I said it earlier on. When you have one phase of the football show up and the other two phases struggle mightily and don't show up in many respects, you're going to have a hard time winning a football game, and that's nothing against BYU's defense. Jay Hill had his guys balling out, and when you hold a team like Texas Tech to 29 points, multiple trips inside the red zone where they came away with just field goals instead of touchdowns, that's a good day for BYU's defense. They did their job. Speaking of BYU defensively, the unfortunate part is, once again, the special teams and the offense failed them. They failed them miserably. Isaiah Glasgow led the way with 10 total tackles, 5 of them solo. He had a sack. Jack Kelly had 7 tackles in his own right. He had 2 sacks, 2 tackles for loss, also a pass breakup. Tanner Wall, 8 tackles. I think Tanner continues to be absolutely awesome out there. So BYU did their thing defensively, but when you can't get an offense that is going to complement the defense in a game like this, eventually the whole bend don't break. There comes a breaking point, and they broke late in this game. So you just got to let things go here for BYU. The whole mentality now has to be on TCU. Texas Tech's in the rearview mirror. You may get another crack at them down the line, but you can't look back at that loss. You also can't look down the line at a rematch there, because if you do that, it's a whole old adage of focus on the here and now. And the here and now for BYU is the TCU Horned Frogs. Josh Hoover and company, and I'm going to get off and go watch this game before I head down to the Marriott Center. They're going to be a formidable opponent for BYU. They have an ability to torch you through the air. And I think a lot of teams have learned a lot about TCU, that they're a team not to be trifled with. And I know BYU's history also teaches us that. Real point here, some questions being asked about JoJo Phillips. You know what? First game back, and he had a big drop in this game, but I actually kind of appreciate it. That's what I guess one thing I'll point out here is that as soon as JoJo Phillips dropped that pass, very next play, BYU went right back to him. That's to build confidence. I appreciate the fact that Aaron Roderick made a play call saying, okay, I know he dropped that pass, and it would have been a nice pass to catch because it was a first down. It was a chain mover, and you need to catch that pass, but you went right back to him. I think JoJo's only going to get better from here. Would it have been nice to have had him earlier on than the Stanford game? But yeah, it would have been. But he broke his clavicle, and he's out for a certain indeterminate amount of time, and he's back for Texas Tech. So that's nice to see that. So I do think that the whole deal with BYU is you flush this game. It's one of those games that I had to coach when I played high school football. We got beat in some blowout fashions, and he would say, okay, we're burning that tape. We're not rewatching it. And said, we're focusing on moving forward here. So we'll see what happens with BYU moving forward here. Playoff committee doesn't respect comeback wins versus non-ranked teams. Then why is BYU ranked 7? Thought to be pondered there, because they've had multiple comeback wins against unranked teams and are ranked in the top 10. But beside the point there. All right, that's going to do it. As always, why no 2-minute offense? What do you mean? They did try to run the 2-minute offense. Once again, Texas Tech's defense is legit, Travis. I'm telling you, Texas Tech is as good a team as I have seen with my own eyes in quite some time. They are absolutely awesome. So I do think that is a fun thing to look at, is that Texas Tech, you may get another chance at that. I was reading a trash comment. But I do think that you're going to learn a lot about BYU this next week. We're going to see how much they learned from a season ago, because as I mentioned, they know how things went sideways a season ago. Now it's their chance to course correct and get back moving forward here. So I'm interested to see where things move forward here, and TCU will learn a lot. So I'm going to sign off now, but as always, thank you for all y'all's support. You guys are absolutely awesome. If you haven't done so already, make sure you hit that like button down in the lower right corner. Help the algorithm out a little bit. And as always, we'll have plenty of coverage for you guys coming up tonight as BYU basketball is in action, taking on Holy Cross. AJ DeBonce, Richie Saunders, Robert Wright III, they're all in action as well. So we're going to see a lot of basketball action tonight. We'll have another postcast coming up later tonight if you guys want to check that out. Talking hoops all along the way. So we'll see all what happens, and we'll see what happens with the CFP rankings coming up on Tuesday. All right, everybody, have a great rest of your day, and we'll catch you guys later on tonight. And as always, thank you for making Locked On Cougars your first listen of the day, and we'll catch you guys again soon right here on the Locked On Podcast Network.